Welcome to the Fast Times News podcast from the team over at the Fast Times News YouTube channel.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going deep on something that's got everyone talking. Trump's nomination of Matthew Whitaker as U.S. ambassador to NATO.
Huge news, for sure.
Yeah, you've probably heard of Whitaker, right? Acting Attorney General under Trump, known for, well, being a loyalist.
That's putting it lightly.
But NATO, that's a whole different ballgame, especially now, globally speaking.
Absolutely.
So we got to unpack this, what this means for NATO, for U.S. foreign policy, for global security, everything.
Where do we even begin?
Well, the announcement itself, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Guardian, CNN, AP, they all focus on Trump emphasizing Whitaker's warrior spirit.
See, that right there, that's telling.
Yeah.
It's like hinting at a shift from the whole diplomacy thing, you know? Maybe towards something more aggressive within NATO.
Which is interesting, given Trump's history with NATO, right?
Hmm.
He's had his criticisms, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Not spending enough on defense, questioning the alliance's value, the whole 9 yards.
Classic Trump.
So is this pick like him sticking to America first, even if it ruffles feathers?
Could be.
And then there's Whitaker's background, right? AP makes it clear his whole career is law enforcement, U.S. attorney, acting AG.
But foreign policy, diplomacy,
Crickets.
that's what's so eyebrow-raising. This is super unusual for a NATO ambassador.
Yeah, usually it's seasoned diplomats, military bigwigs, foreign policy wonks.
People who've spent their lives in that world.
So it makes you wonder, is Whitaker qualified? Can he actually be effective in this role?
Huge question marks.
So, okay, you've got Trump, who's been openly skeptical of NATO.
Right.
Picking someone with basically zero foreign policy experience to be the U.S. representative to that very alliance.
Yeah.
What kind of message does that send to our allies, to the rest of the world?
Not a good one, I'd say.
And the timing couldn't be worse. The world's on edge. NATO's crucial for supporting Ukraine.
It's a powder keg.
CNN emphasized this. Whitaker's walking right into a firestorm.
And let's not forget, Trump and Vance's skepticism about staying committed to Ukraine. CNN points that out, too.
Right.
That could create some serious friction within the alliance, for sure.
So we've got a president who's questioned NATO's value, an ambassador with no real diplomatic chops, and a major international crisis.
Yeah.
Not exactly a recipe for stability, is it?
And let's not forget the AP's point about qualifications versus loyalty.
Right.
They highlighted how unusual it is for a NATO ambassador to have no foreign policy experience.
Compared to past ambassadors, the generals, the diplomats, the academics, it's a stark contrast.
Is Trump putting loyalty above competence, choosing someone he trusts even if they lack the experience for such a high-stakes position?
That's what a lot of people are asking.
And it plays into this whole narrative about Trump that personal loyalty trumps everything.
You're either with me or against me, kind of thing.
Exactly.
But it's more than just experience,
Yeah.
right? It's about diplomacy, negotiation, building relationships with foreign leaders.
Totally different skills than what you need in law enforcement.
Right. Diplomacy takes finesse, navigating tricky situations, finding common ground, even when there are huge disagreements.
It's about representing U.S. interests while considering our allies' perspectives, working together to achieve shared goals.
And that's where Whitaker's lack of experience could be a problem.
Big time.
Especially now. Tensions are high, trust is fragile, allies are looking to the U.S. for leadership.
Exactly. And the AP drove this home. They quoted General Breedlove, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO.
Oh, interesting.
He stressed the importance of the ambassador having credibility, trust from both the president and the other NATO members.
They need to believe he represents the U.S.'s intentions, that he can actually do the job.
If they don't, if they doubt our commitment, it's a domino effect.
One by one, they lose faith.
Exactly. Uncertainty spreads throughout NATO. Countries start questioning collective action, whether they can rely on the U.S. in a crisis.
And that hesitation, that lack of unity, could embolden adversaries like Russia.
Always looking for weaknesses to exploit.
So this appointment, it's not just about Whitaker. It's about the entire alliance.
Global security hangs in the balance.
And speaking of global security, let's bring it back to Ukraine.
The elephant in the room.
It's a trial by fire for Whitaker, walking into this with NATO's support for Ukraine so crucial.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about the skepticism from Trump and Vance. That could create tension.
For sure, many European members are deeply committed to supporting Ukraine if Whitaker shares those doubts.
It could undermine NATO's response.
Potentially.
So we've got a president with a history of questioning NATO, an ambassador with no real experience, and a major international crisis.
It's a volatile mix.
But is there any way this could actually work out? Like any potential upsides?
It's easy to focus on the negatives, but you're right. There are other perspectives.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
And one potential upside is that close relationship with Trump.
Ah, okay.
It could be a direct line to the president, streamlining communication, decision-making within the alliance.
So he's like a translator, making sure everyone understands Trump's intentions.
Exactly, especially given Trump's, shall we say, unconventional communication style.
Those off-the-cuff remarks, yeah.
Having someone who can explain Trump's thinking, smooth things over, could be valuable.
So maybe Whitaker's lack of experience is an advantage in this weird way. He's not bound by the usual protocols.
He might shake things up, bring fresh ideas, who knows?
But there's also the risk of a misstep, alienating allies, undermining the U.S.
It's a high-wire act, for sure.
High risk, high reward.
Absolutely.
But we've been so focused on Whitaker, we almost forgot the bigger picture. Trump's approach to NATO.
It's not just about one person, it's about a worldview.
Back to America first.
Yeah.
Wow. Is this appointment a sign that he's doubling down on that?
It's a good question.
Because his first term, it often felt like he saw alliances as burdens, not assets.
Complaining about the U.S. doing too much, threatening to withdraw from agreements, the whole shebang.
Which freaked out our allies. They felt like he was undermining the very institutions that kept things stable.
It was a turbulent time, to say the least.
So has he changed his tune? Does he see the value of alliances now? Will he be more cooperative?
We'll have to see.
It's not just about alliances, though, right? It's the whole tone of U.S. foreign policy.
True.
Will it be confrontational, go it alone, like his first term? Or will he try to build bridges, work with other nations?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because his first term, the rhetoric, the actions, the spats with foreign leaders, it all created this feeling of instability.
A lot of unpredictability.
It made it harder for the U.S. to lead. When countries don't trust you, it's hard to build consensus.
Diplomacy 101.
So did Trump learn from his first term? Will he build strong relationships, work within international institutions?
If he doesn't, if he keeps going down the same path, it could have serious consequences for U.S. leadership.
Our ability to tackle global challenges, climate change, pandemics, terrorism.
It all hangs in the balance.
So this appointment, it's a window into Trump's thinking, a preview of his foreign policy.
And a reminder that the stakes are incredibly high.
The decisions made now will have a huge impact on the world.
For years to come.
It's a lot to process, but we have to be engaged, understand the issues, hold our leaders accountable.
Absolutely.
And speaking of accountability, there's another part of Whitaker's background we need to address. His past controversies. CNN really digs into this questionable things during his time as acting attorney general.
It raises concerns about his judgment, his fitness to represent the U.S. on the world stage.
Exactly. So let's unpack these controversies, see what they tell us about Whitaker.
Let's do it.
One that stands out is his handling of the Mueller investigation, taking over after Trump fired Sessions.
A contentious move, to say the least.
CNN points out that Whitaker was openly critical of the investigation.
Which raised concerns about interference.
Big time. People were saying his appointment was unconstitutional. It created this perception of partisanship.
Putting loyalty to Trump above the Justice Department's impartiality.
And CNN also highlights his clashes with Democrats during congressional testimony, refusing to answer questions.
Not a good look.
It fueled suspicions, made people wonder what he was hiding.
That lack of transparency, the unwillingness to be held accountable, it's concerning.
And then there's the whole world patent marketing thing. The AP investigated that.
Oh, right. That was a mess.
The company was accused of misleading consumers, and Whitaker's role raised ethical questions.
About his business dealings.
The AP even mentioned the FBI was investigating the company at one point.
Dicks.
Whitaker claimed he didn't know about any fraud, but it damaged his reputation.
Definitely.
So, the Mueller investigation, the congressional testimony, the shady business, not exactly confidence-inspiring.
A lot of red flags.
How will our allies react? Will they trust someone with this baggage, someone who seems to prioritize loyalty over transparency and accountability?
It's the question everyone's asking.
And this isn't just about Whitaker's qualifications. It's about the U.S.'s image, our credibility, the strength of our alliances.
It all ties together.
And speaking of the strength of our alliances, we have to talk about global security.
Right. This isn't just politics. It has real-world consequences.
The U.S. ambassador to NATO shapes the alliance's response to global threats.
And with Whitaker, there are questions about how the U.S. will approach those challenges.
Like what? What are the biggest concerns?
Well, Russia, for one, they've become more assertive. Crimea, election meddling, supporting separatists in Ukraine.
And Trump's history with Putin doesn't exactly help.
Not at all.
The AP even mentioned Trump joking about letting Russia do whatever the hell they want to NATO countries that don't spend enough on defense.
That didn't go over well.
Understatement.
Those comments, Trump's admiration for Putin, it's shaken our allies' faith in us.
So can Whitaker reassure them. Show that the U.S. is serious about deterring Russia.
It remains to be seen.
But it's not just Russia, right? There's terrorism, cyber attacks, climate change.
All major threats.
And with Whitaker's lack of experience, can he handle those complex challenges?
That's the worry.
So is this appointment going to weaken NATO when the world needs a strong alliance?
It's a real possibility.
And we'll be watching closely to see how it unfolds.
Absolutely.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about how this appointment could affect different regions and countries.
Okay.
This isn't just some abstract game. It has real consequences for real people.
For sure.
Let's start with Europe. They're at the heart of NATO.
Right.
Remember Trump criticizing them for not spending enough on defense?
Oh, yeah.
That caused tension, and Whitaker's appointment could reignite those anxieties.
European leaders are probably wondering if the U.S. is truly committed to their security.
Will they be left vulnerable?
That's the fear.
And that uncertainty could make them question NATO, maybe even look for other security arrangements.
Which is exactly what Russia wants.
A fractured Europe, less reliant on the U.S.
It's a domino effect, one decision leading to another and another.
And speaking of domino effects, what about the Baltic states? Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania?
Right on Russia's doorstep.
They rely heavily on NATO for protection. They're probably watching this appointment very nervously.
Given what happened in Ukraine, their concerns are understandable.
If the U.S. seems less committed to NATO, Russia might be emboldened to make a move on them, too.
It's a very real possibility.
So this appointment adds another layer of complexity to an already tense region.
It's a geopolitical chess game with incredibly high stakes.
And we can't overlook Asia either. China's a major player. They're watching how the U.S. engages with its allies.
For sure, they're paying attention.
So this isn't just a European issue?
Not all.
If they see this as a weakening of U.S. commitment to NATO, they might get more assertive in the Asia-Pacific?
Test the waters, see how far they can push.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but it makes sense.
It highlights the global ripple effects of this decision.
And what about the Middle East?
NATO's not directly involved there, but the U.S. has big interest.
If we're seen as unreliable by NATO allies, it could affect our ability to build coalitions in the Middle East, too.
Credibility matters everywhere.
So this appointment could potentially touch every corner of the globe.
It's a lot to take in.
And I'm sure our listeners are wondering what it means for them personally.
It's a good question.
It shows why it's so important to stay informed, pay attention, engage in these discussions.
We can't just tune it out.
We have a role to play in shaping foreign policy.
It's not just something that happens in Washington. It affects all of us.
Decisions about foreign policy can impact everything: trade, the economy, national security, our freedoms.
It's all connected.
So we need to be aware, have these conversations, think about the future we want.
And that's what we're trying to do here at the Fast Times News Podcast. Dig into these issues, explore the different sides, give our listeners the information they need
to understand this crazy world.
And we want you, our listeners, to join the conversation, share your thoughts, your insights, your questions.
This is a dialogue. We're all in this together.
Trying to make sense of it all.
Now, before we wrap up this part, there's one more thing about Whitaker we need to talk about.
Oh.
It came up in a few of our sources. It's about his legal background. Could that actually be relevant to the NATO ambassador role?
You're talking about his experience as a litigator.
Yeah, it's not the usual qualification, but it could be an asset.
How so?
The AP article mentioned that NATO ambassadors deal with a lot of complex legal agreements and treaties.
I see.
Having a sharp legal mind could be helpful there.
Good point. And it's not just understanding documents. It's about thinking strategically, analyzing arguments, building a case. Skills that Whitaker honed as a lawyer.
So maybe his lack of diplomatic experience is balanced out by his legal background.
It's an interesting twist.
A paradox, almost.
It makes this appointment even more unique. Whitaker's background is so different from the usual NATO ambassador.
We're in uncharted territory.
It's hard to predict how he'll approach the role.
He's a wild card.
But that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Definitely.
It'll be interesting to see if he uses his legal skills, his understanding of negotiation to navigate NATO.
Or if he'll try to be a more traditional diplomat.
He has two different toolkits.
And we don't know which one he'll choose.
The uncertainty is what makes this so intriguing.
It shows that leadership doesn't always fit a mold.
Sometimes the most unexpected people bring fresh perspectives.
So while Whitaker's appointment has raised concerns, it's also sparked curiosity.
People want to see how he'll handle it, what impact he'll have.
It's a reminder that in foreign policy, there are rarely easy answers.
It's constantly evolving, full of surprises.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely.
But let's get back to some specifics.
Okay.
We talked about the impact on regions, but let's zoom in on individual countries.
Sounds good.
Starting with Europe. Who do you think will feel the impact the most?
I think the countries most vulnerable to Russia, like Poland and the Baltic states, are probably pretty anxious right now.
They're already on edge because of Ukraine.
And any sign that the U.S. is wavering on NATO could be really unsettling for them.
They need the U.S. to be a strong ally to deter Russia.
Exactly. And if they start to doubt us, they might feel like they have to go it alone.
Maybe seek closer ties with other European countries, or build up their own defenses.
Which could fracture NATO, make it harder to stand up to Russia.
And that plays right into Russia's hands.
They want to see cracks in the alliance, any sign of weakness.
So this appointment could actually push some NATO members closer to Russia.
The opposite of what the U.S. wants.
It's a delicate situation. Navigating geopolitics when alliances are shifting, the balance of power is in flux.
It's a complex world.
It shows the importance of leadership, of clear communication.
Absolutely.
Now, let's move beyond Europe. What about China? How are they viewing this?
They're watching closely, trying to figure out if this signals a change in U.S. foreign policy, especially in Asia.
They're strategic, for sure.
China's a rising power. They have ambitions. They're always looking for opportunities.
And they've been watching our commitment to our allies in Asia.
You might see this as a test.
So they might push the boundaries, see how we react.
They could increase their military presence in the South China Sea, put more pressure on Taiwan, try to forge ties with our allies.
They're waiting to see what we do.
Like a poker game?
Whitaker's appointment has definitely got their attention.
It sparked speculation and analysis all over the world.
Everyone's trying to figure out what it means, how it'll change things.
It shows how interconnected our world is, how U.S. decisions have far-reaching consequences.
Even small personnel changes can have ripple effects.
It's a reminder that we live in a complex world. Actions have unintended consequences. National interests can lead to unexpected outcomes.
It's a world where understanding other countries' motivations is crucial, where diplomacy and strategy are essential.
And where even the best plans can go awry.
It's a world that demands our attention, our engagement, our willingness to face tough questions and challenges.
And that's what we're here for, to help make sense of it all.
We'll continue to explore this complex world, but for now, we'll take a quick break.
Sounds good.
And when we come back, we'll discuss some key takeaways and explore potential scenarios for how this might play out.
I'm looking forward to it.
Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ready to dive back into this whole NATO situation.
Lots to unpack still.
Yeah, we were talking about how this appointment could affect specific countries, and I think we left off with China.
Right. They're definitely watching this whole thing unfold with a keen eye.
Trying to figure out what it means for them, especially in the Asia-Pacific region.
Exactly. China's playing the long game, always looking for an edge.
So if they see Whitaker's appointment as a sign of weakness, of the U.S. stepping back from its commitments.
We might see it as an opportunity.
To push their own agenda.
Potentially, yeah.
Like what specifically? What could they do?
Well, they could get more aggressive in the South China Sea, maybe increase their military presence there.
That's been a flashpoint for a while.
They could also put more pressure on Taiwan, economically, maybe even diplomatically.
Taiwan's been a sensitive issue for a long time.
And they could try to strengthen ties with countries that are traditionally aligned with the U.S., try to pull them into their sphere of influence.
So basically, they're waiting to see how we react, how committed we are to our allies.
Exactly. They're strategic. They're not going to make any sudden moves.
But they're watching, assessing, looking for any advantage they can get.
It's like a game of chess. They're thinking several moves ahead.
And Whitaker's appointment has thrown a new piece onto the board.
It's shaken things up, created uncertainty.
And that uncertainty can be dangerous. It can create opportunities for miscalculation, for escalation.
Absolutely. That's the risk we're facing here.
So what can be done? How do we navigate this new reality?
Well, first and foremost, We need clear communication with our allies.
Reassure them that we're still committed, that we're not abandoning them.
Exactly. We need to be strong, resolute, show that we're not going to be intimidated by China's posturing.
But it's not just about talking tough. It's about backing it up with action.
Absolutely. We need to maintain a strong military presence in the region, invest in our alliances, support our partners.
Show that we're serious about maintaining stability and security in the Asia-Pacific.
And we need to be smart about it, strategic, not just reacting to China's moves, but setting our own agenda.
So it's a delicate balance, projecting strength while also avoiding unnecessary provocation.
Exactly. It's a complex challenge, but one that we have to get right.
The stakes are too high to ignore this.
Absolutely. The future of the Asia-Pacific region and the world hangs in the balance.
And that brings us back to the bigger picture, the global implications of this appointment.
It's not just about NATO, it's about the whole international order.
The rules of the game, the alliances, the institutions that have kept things relatively stable for decades.
And Trump's America First approach, his skepticism of international cooperation, has thrown a wrench into the works.
It's created uncertainty, instability, a sense that the old order is crumbling.
And that's dangerous because when the rules are unclear, when alliances are weak, it creates opportunities for conflict.
Countries might feel like they have to fend for themselves, that they can't rely on their allies.
And that can lead to a spiral of mistrust, of escalation, of everyone looking out for their own interests.
It's a recipe for chaos, and that's what we have to avoid.
Absolutely. We need to reaffirm our commitment to the international order, to the institutions that have served us well.
Strengthen our alliances. Work together to address common challenges.
Show the world that we're still committed to cooperation, to diplomacy, to finding peaceful solutions.
The alternative is too dangerous to contemplate.
It's a world of conflict, of instability, of everyone for themselves.
And that's not a world that anyone wants to live in.
We have to work together to prevent that from happening.
So this appointment, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that the stakes are high.
It's a test of our leadership, of our commitment to the values that have made the world a safer place.
And we can't afford to fail that test.
The consequences are too great.
Now, I know this is a lot to absorb, and it can feel overwhelming.
It's a lot to process.
But it's important to remember that we're not powerless in this.
We have a voice. We have agency.
We can make a difference.
Absolutely. Even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Like what can we do?
Well, we can stay informed, educate ourselves about these issues, talk to our friends and family.
Share what we've learned, raise awareness.
We can contact our elected officials, let them know that we care about these issues, that we want them to prioritize diplomacy and cooperation.
Hold them accountable for their decisions.
We can support organizations that are working to promote peace, to build bridges between countries, to find common ground.
There are a lot of people out there doing amazing work, and they need our support.
And most importantly, we can't give up hope.
Even when things seem bleak, when the world feels like it's spinning out of control.
We have to believe that a better future is possible.
And we have to work towards that future every single day.
Because our actions, our choices, they matter.
It can make a difference.
And that's what gives me hope, knowing that there are so many people out there who care about these issues, who are working to create a better world.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in this.
We're all in this together.
And together, we can make a difference. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. This whole NATO ambassador situation, it's a lot to process.
It really is. A lot of moving parts, a lot of potential consequences.
But let's try to bring it all together. What are the key takeaways for our listeners? What does this all mean?
I think the biggest takeaway is that foreign policy matters. It's not some abstract thing happening in a faraway place.
It affects us all right here, right now.
Exactly. The decisions made by our leaders, the alliances we form, the conflicts we engage in, they have a direct impact on our lives.
Our economy, our security, even our freedoms.
It's all interconnected. We can't ignore what's happening in the world. It's going to come back and affect us one way or another.
So this whole Whitaker appointment, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that we need to be paying attention, we need to be engaged.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and assume that someone else is going to take care of things, that everything will be fine.
We have a responsibility to be informed citizens, to understand the issues, to make our voices heard.
And to hold our leaders accountable. They work for us. We have a right to demand that they represent our interests, that they make decisions that are in the best interests of the country and the world.
So what can we do? It all feels so big, so complex. How can we as individuals actually make a difference?
Well, it starts with education, with informing ourselves about the issues, reading about them, talking about them, having these kinds of conversations.
The more we know, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions, to engage in meaningful dialogue, to advocate for the policies we believe in.
And we can get involved in different ways. We can contact our elected officials, let them know what we think, what we care about.
We can support organizations that are working to promote peace, to build bridges between countries, to address global challenges.
We can volunteer our time, donate to causes we believe in, spread the word. There are so many ways to make a difference.
And most importantly, we can't lose hope. It's easy to get discouraged, to feel like the problems are too big, too entrenched.
But cynicism and apathy are not solutions. They only make things worse.
We have to believe that change is possible, that we can create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
And we have to act on that belief every single day, in big ways and small ways.
So that's our challenge to you, our listeners. Go out there and make a difference. Get informed, get involved, get engaged.
The world needs your voice, your energy, your passion.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are millions of people around the world who share your concerns, who are working towards the same goals.
Together, we can create a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
And we hope it's inspired you to take action to make a difference.
Head over to our YouTube channel, The Fast Times News, to share your thoughts, join the conversation, and connect with a community of people who are passionate about changing the world.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.